Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world one book at a time.
Today, we are diving deep into a really remarkable book that has, well, captivated millions globally. The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumita Keiko.
And it's so much more than just a self-help text. I mean, it's an incredibly accessible, yet I'd say devastatingly challenging distillation of Alfred Adler's philosophical and psychological ideas.
Exactly. And when we call this philosophical, what we mean is that this framework, it fundamentally challenges the underlying architecture of how so many of us see ourselves, our past, our future.
Yeah, it forces you to confront a truly radical psychological system that really dictates whether your life feels complex and determined or simple and free. It's a real ideological confrontation.
It really is. Our mission in this deep dive is to perform a systematic analysis of Adlerian psychology as it's laid out in this book. We're examining how this specific framework, one built on agency and responsibility, how it challenges the dominant cultural and therapeutic narratives we all sort of swim in.
Especially those centered on trauma, causality, and ultimately what it means to be happy.
Right. Adler's ideas overturn common assumptions so completely that to understand them, you almost need a full system reset of how you view interpersonal relationships.
And the core challenge the book presents, right from the get-go, is its rejection of the familiar. Most of us operate under a system that suggests our problems are caused by things that happen to us.
External factors, historical events, yeah.
And this framework essentially just says that system, that whole way of thinking, is the source of your suffering, and we're going to liberate you from what it calls the tyranny of the past.
But to understand that liberation, you really have to appreciate the book's structure first. It's pretty unusual.
It's a masterclass, really. It's presented as a Socratic-style dialogue over 5 nights between a philosopher and a very skeptical young man just called the youth.
And that format is just so crucial because it doesn't lecture you, it argues with you.
The youth is absolutely vital. He isn't just a placeholder. He's really a proxy for us, the modern reader, who finds the world a chaotic mass of contradictions. He embodies all the intuitive, skeptical objections we have when someone makes these radical claims, like the idea that the world is simple and happiness is just instantly available.
He finds it to be, unacceptable sophistry. He pushes back at every single turn.
He really does.
And that intentional friction is what makes the book work. The authors, Kishimi, who is a philosopher and a certified Adlerian counselor, and Koga, an award-winning writer, they knew that to present these counterintuitive ideas, you needed a real active argument.
Right. Koga even said he wanted to be a Plato for Kishimi, which is such a great way to frame it.
It is. This conversational tension is what prevents the psychological density from feeling like a textbook. It becomes a genuine high-stakes intellectual debate.
So we'll talk about the man behind it all.
Yeah.
Alfred Adler. When we think of the founding figures of psychology, we always say Freud and Jung.
Right.
But Adler is presented here as the unknown third giant of psychology. Why is he so influential, but, comparatively less known?
Well, he is undeniably one of the 3 giants. What's fascinating is that Adler was an original core member of the Vienna Psychoanalytic Society. He was working right alongside Freud.
So they were colleagues.
They were, but their philosophical approaches just diverged so fundamentally that Adler had to split off. He went on to propose individual psychology, a term that I think the book rightly points out is so often misunderstood.
It definitely sounds misleading. If the core argument is that all problems are interpersonal, why would you call your school of thought individual psychology?
Right, it sounds selfish or isolationist.
Yeah, and the youth accuses the philosophy of that later on.
Of course he does.
Yeah.
But the word individual here is critical because Adler chose it for its etymological meaning. Indivisible. Meaning holism. The idea is that a person is a unified whole. You can't break them down into warring parts, not mind versus body, and crucially not conscious versus unconscious. It's a direct shot at Freudian reductionism.
So if someone is feeling anxiety, you can't just treat the anxiety as a symptom of brain chemistry or something purely physical.
Exactly. Adler insisted that every part of you, your mind, your body, your emotions, your actions, is all working together toward a single unified goal, even if you aren't aware of that goal.
So even physical symptoms like blushing or anxiety, they're not random. They serve a purpose.
They're always an expression of a unified self pursuing a direction. And this holistic view is why his influence is so subtle but so widespread. The book notes that his concepts, like the inferiority complex, for instance, became so integrated into common thought that his school itself sometimes gets overlooked.
It's like his ideas just permeated the culture and became common sense even if people forgot the source. The book mentions his ideas are reflected in bestsellers like Dale Carnegie's work and Stephen Covey's 7 Habits.
He actually predicted that. Adler believed his ideas would become so commonplace that the specific school of Adlerian psychology might just be forgotten, which says a lot about how foundational his insights were.
So if we strip it all down, what's the fundamental design clash between Adler's system and, say, the more mainstream Freudian worldview?
It really comes down to a distinction between two Greek concepts, etiology versus teleology.
Okay.
Etiology, which is what Freud championed, is the study of causation. It focuses exclusively on how past causes determine your present effects.
So your childhood trauma causes your present unhappiness. That's the argument. The Earth says it instinctively. Before an effect, there's a cause.
And that feels natural to us, right? We build our narratives by tracing back the why. Why am I anxious? Because of that thing that happened. Why did I fail? Because of this disadvantage I had.
Of course.
And Adlerian psychology just completely rejects that. It throws it out. It rejects the idea that our present is unalterable because it's dictated by the past.
So what's the alternative?
The alternative is teleology, the study of purpose. It focuses on your present goals determining your actions. So, suffering isn't caused by past events, but by the purpose those past events are serving for you, right here, right now.
That is the first just massive system shock the book delivers. It's not asking what happened to you. It's asking, what are you using that experience for right now?
It's a very difficult pill to swallow.
Because it removes the comfort of blame.
It demands radical agency. Adler states it plainly, and I'm paraphrasing here. We do not suffer from the shock of our experiences, the so-called trauma, but instead we make out of them whatever suits our purposes.
Wow. We are not determined by our experiences, but the meaning we give them is self-determining.
Yes. The philosopher gives that great analogy of the well water. The water is objectively 60 degrees. That's the fact. That's the past event, the trauma, if you will.
Okay, static, can't be changed.
Right. But if you drink that water in the summer, it feels cool. If you drink it in the winter, it feels warm. The objective fact is the same, but the subjective meaning you assign to it, that's what changes your entire experience of the water.
And in psychology, the objective fact is the past event, but the subjective meaning is the lifestyle we choose in response to it.
And if we stay stuck in etiology and constantly searching for past causes, we bind ourselves to something that cannot be changed. Adler argued that's the path to nihilism.
You become helpless.
Exactly. The only way to move forward is to break that bond and assert that your life is determined here and now by the choices you're making.
That radical agency really sets the stage for the rest of the system. Let's move to the bedrock claim, the one that seems to fly right in the face of the term individual psychology.
The radical claim is all problems are interpersonal relationship problems.
Okay, I have to stop you there. That sounds hyperbolic. I mean, what about existential dread? Or a fear of heights, crushing financial pressure? Surely those are internal, right?
Adler insists that if you lived entirely alone in the universe, all of those problems would genuinely disappear.
I'm not sure I follow.
Think about it. Fear of heights exists because you fear the social embarrassment of falling or failing. Financial pressure exists because of social comparison, expectation, the need to interact with an economic system involving others.
Huh.
Even loneliness, the ultimate isolated feeling, only exists when others are present and you feel excluded from them.
So even our deepest internal worries, according to this system, they always carry the shadow of other people. If I worry about my self-worth, I'm worrying about how that's perceived by others.
That is the structural implication. A human being's existence, in its very essence, assumes the existence of others. So this framework says you must confront interpersonal relationships, and Adler structures these confrontations into 3 life tasks.
These are the 3 inescapable social ties. They sort of define the distance and depth of our relationships.
Correct. The tasks of work, the tasks of friendship, and the tasks of love. The philosopher argues that our unhappiness so often stems from the inability or the lack of courage to face these tasks.
The work tasks seem like the lowest hurdle. You have a common goal, get the job done, make money, so you can cooperate even if you don't really like each other.
Right. The objective is a relatively safe buffer. And that's why when people struggle with work tasks, like the shut-ins the book mentions, they're often not avoiding the work.
They're avoiding the interpersonal side of it.
They're avoiding the judgment, the criticism, the risk of being labeled incompetent. It's the social risk they fear, not the technical difficulty.
Friendship is next, which is between equals and requires more trust. And then the deepest hurdle is love,
Which is divided into intimate relationships and family dynamics. Adler argues that trying to restrict a partner isn't love. It's an attempt to control born from a deep distrust.
right? True love, in this sense, allows the other person to behave very freely.
Yes, without feeling inferior or needing to flaunt superiority, and that takes immense courage, because it opens you up to the risk of loss.
The need to face these tasks brings us right back to that core challenge, rejecting trauma as the ultimate determinant. This is where the teleological framework really gets tough.
It does. The youth in the book, naturally, argues that past abuse must cause present anxiety or fear, but the philosopher says this is determinism, and it's psychologically paralyzing.
So the person who can't leave their room, what's the teleological explanation?
The explanation is that they are manufacturing anxiety and fear, and these are genuinely felt symptoms, to achieve the present goal of not leaving the room.
So the anxiety is a tool. But doesn't that sound incredibly callous? Like you're saying their pain is just an excuse.
And this is the nuance that's so hard to grasp. Adler is not saying the person is faking it. He's not denying that past harm happened. The anxiety is real, the fear is real, but they are created by the mind as a means to achieve a chosen goal. The goal comes first. The emotion is the tool.
And the goal, in the recluse example, is what?
It's likely multifaceted. To avoid the life tasks outside, to prevent the painful risk of failure, and, crucially, to get special attention from their parents. If they stay inside, their parents worry, they're handled carefully, they achieve a special status they wouldn't have otherwise.
It's choosing the known disappointment of not changing over the unknown anxiety of changing.
Exactly. And we have to clarify the inferiority complex here. Adler says feelings of inferiority are normal and healthy. They're what drives us to improve.
Okay.
An inferiority complex, though, is when a person uses that feeling as an excuse to stop trying. I'm not smart enough, so I can't even attempt this.
Yeah.
The complex is the life lie used to avoid the life task.
That's a crucial distinction. The complex is the surrender. The anger example in the book really brings this home. The youth shouts at a waiter and says his rage was an uncontrollable cause.
And the philosopher challenges him sharply. He says, you did not fly into a rage and then start shouting. You got angry so that you could shout.
The goal was to make the waiter submit.
And anger was just the fastest, easiest tool to achieve that goal. It's a tool to assert power.
The mother on the phone story is the perfect proof. She's screaming at her daughter, the phone rings, and instantly she's polite and sweet to the teacher. Hangs up, and the anger is right back.
If you were truly controlled by an uncontrollable emotion, that shift would be impossible. The anger was a tool, put away and then picked back up.
So we are not controlled by emotion, nor by the past. We choose the meaning we give to events, and that choice determines our present purpose.
And the ultimate realization of that agency is freedom itself.
Which brings us to that famous, provocative definition from the title.
Yes, freedom is being disliked by other people.
Which is such a paradox for us today. We think freedom is doing what you want, but we also assume that fulfillment means getting lots of approval.
But Adler argues that trying to live a life that satisfies everyone is an extremely unfree way of living. If you're constantly gauging other people's feelings, your boss, your parents, your followers, you're repressing your true self, you're lying.
You're letting other people steer your life.
Entirely. So the consequence of choosing real freedom is the possibility or even the guarantee of being disliked. That dislike is actually proof that you're living by your own principles.
The cost of freedom is the courage to be disliked. And that insight brings us to the operational mechanism, the how-to.
The separation of tasks. This is the practical way to stop living for others and start living for yourself.
It's the key process for reducing conflict and establishing your own autonomy.
And the method is simple, but it requires constant vigilance. You just have to ask, whose task is this? And then the rule is absolute. Do not intervene in others' tasks, and don't let them intervene in yours.
How do you figure out whose task it is, though? Especially in, say, a family.
The criterion is who ultimately receives the consequence of the choice. If a child chooses a career their parents disapprove of, the consequence of that job, the good and the bad, falls on the child. So it's the child's task.
And the parent's feeling of disapproval.
That's the parent's task to manage. It's not the child's job to fix their parents' emotions about a choice that isn't theirs.
Let's take that to a professional setting. My boss is irrational and angry, even though I've done my job correctly. His anger is his task.
Absolutely. It is not your job to manage his emotions or to constantly seek his approval. Worrying about how others see you is proof that you haven't separated tasks. You're mistakenly thinking their judgment is your problem to solve.
Right, there's that great line, you're the only one who's worried how you look. What other people think of your actions is their business, and you can't and shouldn't try to control it.
And this failure to separate tasks is often driven by a need for recognition, which Adler blames on what he calls reward and punishment education.
The carrot of praise or the stick of rebuke.
Both are tools of manipulation in a vertical relationship. They establish the person giving the reward as superior.
And the person receiving it as subservient.
Right. If you praise a child for studying, they learn, if no one is going to praise me, I won't do the right thing. The motivation becomes external. But true freedom requires horizontal, equal relationships. So we have to stop praising and rebuking because both are just forms of judgment.
So if all problems are interpersonal and separating tasks is the key to freedom, what's the ultimate goal? It can't just be isolation.
No, the ultimate aim is what Adler called community feeling or social interest. This requires a big internal shift from attachment to self-centeredness to concern for others.
So you stop seeing yourself as the main character in the movie of your life.
Exactly. You see that the I is just one member of a much larger community, which in its biggest sense is the entire universe.
So a sense of belonging is the other side of the coin to freedom. And this community feeling is achieved through 3 required elements.
It's almost like a checklist for a healthy lifestyle. The first is self-acceptance.
Which means accepting the irreplaceable this me, just as it is. It's about seeing your strengths and weaknesses clearly and having the courage to change what you can change.
It's like the serenity prayer. It's not self-affirmation, which can be about lying to yourself. It's about accepting reality with courage.
The second is confidence in others. And this one is maybe the highest bar in the whole philosophy. It's described as unconditional belief.
A total contrast with conditional trust. Trust is based on collateral, on facts. I trust you with this money because you have a good credit score.
Right.
Confidence is choosing to believe in the other person without expecting a guarantee.
Yeah?
You choose to believe over doubt, because if you lay a foundation of doubt, the other person feels it instantly, and you can't build a real horizontal relationship.
But what if they betray you?
That is their task, their consequence.
Yeah.
You have to decide to believe the other is a comrade, and if they choose to act otherwise, that's on them.
That is a staggering level of vulnerability to commit to.
It is. And finally, the third element, which is really the guiding star of the whole philosophy, contribution to others.
This means acting in a way that's beneficial to the community. But the book is clear this is not self-sacrifice.
No. Contribution is what you do in order to feel your own worth. It's the subjective feeling I am of use to someone that is the only genuine source of a true sense of worth, and therefore happiness.
So you don't need external praise for helping a neighbor. The act itself and that internal feeling of being useful is the reward.
And that's what gives you courage. It is only when a person is able to feel that he has worth that he can possess courage.
So it creates a positive feedback loop. Contribution generates worth, which generates the courage to face the life tasks.
Exactly.
Okay, let's zoom out and map the system dynamics. We know vertical relationships, fueled by a desire for praise, are the problem. Let's trace the negative feedback loops.
The main incentive driving the problems is that desire for approval and recognition seeking. But there's also the powerful incentive of just avoiding conflict and avoiding responsibility.
Which is where the concept of the life lie comes in. The excuse you create.
The life lie is just coming up with any and all excuses to avoid the life tasks. You shift responsibility, I can't succeed because of my inferiority complex, or I can't advance because of my awful boss.
And the lie is preferred because changing is scary. It's unknown.
You choose the known, predictable unhappiness over the unknown, terrifying anxiety of actually changing.
It's a profound insight. We prefer stable misery to unstable potential happiness.
And when these vertical relationships lead to conflict, the relationship immediately becomes a power struggle. The moment you're convinced I am right, it stops being about truth. It's about winning.
And if you lose that power struggle,
then you might resort to revenge. Your goal is no longer resolution. It's about demonstrating your power or getting special attention.
So the negative loop is seeking recognition leads to vertical relationships, which represses your true self, which causes a fear of being disliked, which leads to making excuses, the life lie, and then isolation.
Exactly. And Adler's view on things like a child's delinquency is really challenging here. He sees it not as an effect of past abuse, but as a goal.
A
A
goal.
powerful attempt to get special attention by upsetting and controlling the parents. It's a form of revenge or manipulation to make the parents suffer and dedicate all their resources to the child's problems.
So if the symptoms are real, but the purpose is control, how does Adler propose breaking that loop?
The correction is a mechanism called encouragement, and this must be based on a strictly horizontal relationship. It's completely different from praise or rebuke.
How is it different from just telling someone good job? Because we're explicitly told not to praise.
Praise is a judgment of good from a superior to an inferior. It makes the other person dependent on your standards. Encouragement, on the other hand, is just conveying sincere gratitude and respect.
So instead of you did well, it's thank you or that was a big help.
That shift from judging performance to acknowledging contribution is everything. The goal isn't to inflate an ego, but to help the other person feel useful, which helps them find the courage to face their own tasks.
And ultimately, you are the only one who can change yourself.
That's the bottom line.
Okay, let's look at the modern implications. It really feels like Adler, writing a century ago, diagnosed the exact disease of modern identity culture.
It's uncanny. I mean, social media is the perfect, scaled-up version of the reward and punishment model he criticized. The likes, the shares, that's quantified, vertical praise.
And the lack of attention or the negative comments are the systemic punishment.
The structural implication is that if you're constantly performing for others' expectations, you are living an unfree way to live. You're placing the cards of your life in others' hands.
You're defining your worth based on a completely unstable vertical standard.
We see it every day. When someone spends hours crafting the perfect post, they are prioritizing the task of others managing perception over their own task of living authentically. Adler would say that's the ultimate act of self-betrayal.
This also gives us a powerful lens to critique a lot of dominant therapeutic narratives today. The cultural focus on etiology, on past harm, is just so appealing.
It is, because it offers easily understandable causality. And more importantly, it offers comfort. It offers an excuse. It's not your fault. Your past trauma is controlling you.
It's a temporary relief from responsibility.
But the Adlerian view frames that attraction as a trap. By focusing on the past, you're forever bound to it. You're stuck.
Only the choice made in the here and now, the teleology, matters for moving forward.
Because the past can't be changed. The moment you decide your goal is to change, the system holds that you have the power to do it by choosing a new purpose.
The book also makes a fascinating connection between the life lie and workaholism. We tend to see workaholism as a virtue.
Right, as discipline or dedication. But the book states explicitly that workaholism is just a sophisticated life lie. It's a mechanism to avoid other equally important life tasks.
Like friendship, family, love.
Exactly. Work becomes the convenient excuse. I'm too busy at work to deal with my failing marriage. The workaholic is lacking in harmony of life because they're using one task as a shield against the courage required for the others.
This whole analysis just fits so perfectly with our broader themes. It shows how the psychological model you adopt shapes your social reality.
If you choose to live through vertical relationships, praise and rebuke, you create a society of competition and power struggles. If you choose horizontal relationships, encouragement, and confidence, you foster community. It's a self-propagating system.
And it even changes how we perceive time. You can view your life as a story, linear, deterministic, climbing towards some future destination.
Or you can view life as a series of dots, moments lived earnestly in the here and now, what the Greeks called energeia.
The story approach means most of your life feels incomplete, like you're just en route to the payoff.
Whereas the series of dots approach is like dancing. Every moment is complete in itself.
That's a great analogy. You don't dance to get somewhere. The movement is the purpose.
And there's no need to compete with anyone else on the dance floor. If you just live those moments of dancing earnestly, you'll get somewhere. But that's not the point.
So why does this radical freedom feel so threatening? Why is the youth in the book constantly resisting it?
Because freedom means embracing the cost of being disliked, moving forward without guarantees. The philosopher says it's hard because living how you like requires immense internal clarity. You have to ask, what do I actually want?
Which is so much harder than just figuring out what other people expect from you.
So much harder, and it's tied to what the book calls the courage to be normal.
Rejecting the need to stand out.
Yes. Most people pursue what Adler called easy superiority. They try to be especially good, the star student, Or, if that fails, they try to be especially bad, the delinquent. Both are just ways of getting special attention.
The courage to be normal means accepting you're just a member of the community, not the center of the universe. Your life doesn't need to be a drama to have worth.
And this all comes back to how meaning-making systems influence suffering. Adler says, life in general has no meaning, so you, the individual, must assign meaning to it.
The philosopher's grandfather, the one severely burned in a firebombing, is such a powerful example of this. That objective, horrendous fact could easily justify a worldview that the world is a horrible place.
But he chose a different lifestyle, a different perspective. People are my comrades, and the world is a wonderful place. He chose it. And that is the ultimate example of radical agency. Even in the face of tragedy, the choice of how to respond determines everything.
This has been a really profound breakdown. Let's just reflect on the major paradoxes we've explored.
The first is responsibility without blame. The system says your unhappiness is a choice, a failure of courage. But it's not a moral failing. It's simply an issue of lacking the courage to change.
Then there's freedom without guarantees.
Yeah.
You get freedom by separating tasks and having the courage to be disliked. And your guiding star in that freedom has to be contribution to others, so you don't get lost in self-centeredness.
And finally, happiness without external validation. True happiness comes from the internal, subjective feeling that I am of use to someone, which makes the need for praise completely obsolete.
So the ultimate lesson seems to be about embracing the here and now.
And embracing imperfection, living that energial way of life as a series of complete moments. Live like you're dancing, not climbing a mountain.
And that leads to the final, really provocative thought about agency. The realization that my power is immeasurably great.
Because if I change, the world will change. You are no longer a victim of your past or your environment. You are the central, active agent of change.
The challenge is just taking that first step, regardless of whether anyone else cooperates or even notices.
You simply have to begin.
That is powerful, and frankly, terrifying in its implications for personal responsibility. Our immense thanks to Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga for sharing this distillation of Adler's thought in The Courage to be Disliked.
If the ideas we talked about today resonated with you, especially that contrast between etiology and teleology, we really encourage reading the book or borrowing it from a library to get the full, rich dialogue.
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind crisis and perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a shorter visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.